My name is Brandon, and I live in Alabama. I'm about 14, and this story takes place in the year 2008 or 2009. I'm not really sure, I was quite young. So at the time, I lived with my grandmother and grandfather, which I'm not going to say exactly why. So we were beginning to move, and we were doing things around the yard, putting grass around the house. We had a few people helping my grandfather and grandmother, while me and my brother played around in the street and around the house, since it was not a very big house, but big enough for us to have a deck on it, and the back of it there is a small patch of woods just behind the house. So, me and my brother were just playing, and I don't know, I just felt like something was off around the woods behind us, like something was there, keeping an eye on us, watching us. I would hear sounds of leaves and branches moving. Maybe it was the wind, maybe not. Maybe 40 or 50 minutes later, we were pretty hungry and thirsty, so we ate and later on went back to play. So when we got back, we went to play, and about 10 minutes had passed. I totally forgot about the woods, and the sounds I had heard stopped. I stopped and just looked to see if I could see something, and I walked over there. Not really close, but close enough, and still nothing. It's like whatever was in there just stopped, so I didn't want to think about it even more, because I got paranoid easily and left, and didn't go back over behind the house. The next day, there was only a little grass left to cover the house, and the sun was setting, and I didn't remember to avoid the back of the house unless necessary. I was playing, and walked behind and stood. I had a feeling and that something else was there with me. I turned to my right, and I saw this big animal or something, like a werewolf or some sort of upright dog with yellow eyes looking at me, laying on the ground. I stood there for a few seconds and then ran to the front of the house, telling my grandparents what I just saw. Well, neither of them didn't believe me and told me to keep playing, so for the rest of the time, I just sat at the front of the house thinking that's what it was. I still don't know what it was or if it was there at all, and before I moved there, I swear I heard things outside in the woods, and sometimes I've seen things. Things first started really taking off around 2010. See, my best friend lives on the outskirts of a small nearby community, which is only about 10 miles away as the crow flies. There's a lot of heavy brush and forestation. It's all primarily secluded private property. The nearest neighbor is roughly a quarter-mile away in both directions. One night, my best friend's girlfriend had just left his house from spending the evening with him. They were having a picnic outside in his front yard together when he had thrown an apple out in his front yard. He had taken one bite out of it, tasted that it was too sour for him, and threw it. The next morning came, and he was outside his yard doing some cleaning up when he went to go find the apple that he accidentally left and noticed it was gone. He didn't put a lot of thought into it. He just thought an animal had gone and taken it. After all, it was just one apple. He threw it, figuring animals would come and eat it anyway, as he often let out food around for deer and other critters far away from his house to eat. It was about a week later when he came home from work to find a dead fox on his porch. It looked like it had been strangled to death. Its eyes were literally popping out of its skull. He said the kill was fresh and wasn't sure if somebody was just trying to mess with him or what. Then he looked next to the fox, and the same now rotting apple with one bite taken out of it was sitting right next to the dead fox. He began freaking out and was plenty sure that somebody was screwing with his head. He didn't call anyone though. Instead, he waited and gauged to see if anything else would happen. Time went on, and nothing else happened. These events that I just told you about happened in September, before it started to get chilly. And so fast forward about 6 to 9 months to the following spring, just as it was getting warm again. One evening, as he was having his girlfriend over for dinner at his house, his girlfriend started screaming that there was a huge hairy man in the front lawn. He flew out and opened his door. There, standing about 50 feet away in the front yard, was this big, black mass, as he described it. It was just standing there. His eyes tried to focus in on it in the twilight of the evening, but his eyes pulled him to the object that this thing seemed to be holding in its hand. It looked to be a dead raccoon, a rather large one too. He couldn't make out a face, definitive features, or anything else that would be specific to its description, but he said that he felt like it was staring right at him. This thing quickly darted behind a nearby tree once it realized he was looking at it. He said this creature seemed to be about 5 to 6 feet tall, if he had to guess, was really bulky and very shaggy and hairy. He knew instinctually that what he had saw outside of his house was a Sasquatch. Over the next couple of days, he thought more and more about it, and believed that this creature was the thing that had left the dead fox on his porch, along with the apple with one bite taken out of it the previous fall. He hasn't experienced any other activity around his house, or anything like that, since initially sighting this in his front yard. Hello. I have a few short experiences to tell you about. This all started when I was about 12 years old. I'm 19 now. My sister Zoe, father, stepmother at the time, and her 2 daughters, Jade, who was my age, and Maddie, who's my sister's age, were camping. We had really only been there for a day, and everything was fine. Then me and my sisters decided we were going to go to the stream by ourselves. My father gave us a walkie-talkie just so we can keep in contact while we were gone. Now the place we were going to was surrounded by bush, and to get there, you had to go down a little path through it. We spent a while with our shoes off and splashing in the water when Jade said she could see something standing amongst the trees. We all looked and saw a figure. It was black, but you could tell it was the shape of a man. You couldn't see the face. We stared for a few seconds, and then it disappeared. We forgot about it and kept playing in the water, but I felt a little uneasy. A while later, we all looked back, wanting to know if he was still there, and he was. Everything was silent. I could hardly hear the rapids in the little stream. We stopped looking. After about 20 minutes, we headed back to the campsite. The forest and all the noise around us was dead silent. My sisters lingered behind, and I was about 20 meters ahead of them. But we couldn't see each other. I heard a twig snap behind me, and I turned to look, assuming that they had caught up to me. No. I turned to see the tall, dark, black figure literally a foot behind me. So I started running. The whole time I could feel it close behind me. I ran as fast as I could until I was out in the open campground. It was gone. My sisters came out not long after and I told them what had happened. I asked, but none of them had seen it behind me, and they were too far behind anyway. The path was windy, so they were around a corner from me most of the time. Throughout our camping trip, we didn't see it around as much, but occasionally we would just see this figure just standing there, watching us. Fast forward a couple years, and we go back there with my father's new girlfriend and her daughter, Stella. I can't quite recall this trip as much, but I know for a fact that Stella saw it too.